So why don't we get started for the sake of giving people ample time to ask whatever questions you may have. I'm Jamie Lau. I am the supervising attorney of our wrongful convictions clinic here at Duke Law School. And the role of the clinic at the law school is we investigate and ultimately litigate claims of actual innocence on behalf of people who are incarcerated here in North Carolina. Mr. Long's case was one that we litigated all the way through the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, and it was ultimately argued to the en banc Fourth Circuit, so all the judges of the Fourth Circuit sitting together. I should mention Teresa Newman, the founder of the Wrongful Convictions Clinic here at Duke, is with us today. She has now retired and passed the heavy responsibility on to myself and Professor Jim Coleman here at the law school. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the Ronnie Long case. It won't do it justice. Then I'm going to begin interviewing Ronnie about his experience going through the wrongful conviction that he lost 44 years, 3 months, and 17 days of his life as a result of. After I start the Q&A, briefly begin a discussion with Ronnie, we'll invite questions from everyone with respect to anything you have regarding Ronnie's case. The first thing I want to mention is Ronnie's case was a racially charged, hot-button issue from the very beginning, and people protested and tried to bring to light the injustice for years. Ronnie's case was heavily racially charged. He was convicted by an all-white jury. The all-white jury was by design. The jury chairperson from the county took the roles of potential jurors who were going to potentially sit in judgment of Ronnie's guilt and innocence prior to jurors' summons going out to both the chief of police and the elected sheriff in the county, and provided them an opportunity to go through all prospective jurors in his case and to line out any jurors they deemed unfit for jury service. As a result, approximately 100 jurors or potential jurors showed up prior to Ronnie's trial, only 4 of which were black in a county that's 25% black. Those 4 individuals were not selected, and an all-white jury sat in judgment of Ronnie Long. To sort of highlight the racial element, we were just talking about this. This picture at the bottom of the screen is from rallies that were held in Winston-Salem. Is that right, Ashley? In about 2018?
No, that's at Concord. But it's the
Concord. Oh, it's Winston-Salem State students. But this picture here, the top picture, is racially charged somewhat in and of itself because that picture is from November 1979 in Greensboro, North Carolina. The location of the Greensboro massacre, if people are unfamiliar, during this rally, members of the KKK showed up and killed 5 people rallying. It wasn't a rally specific to Ronnie Long, but his parents were members of the organization SCEF. Tell me the acronym. What's SCEF?
Southern Conference Educational Fund.
The Southern Conference Educational Fund. So they were at the rally where members of the KKK showed up and killed 5 people. Charges were brought against those members of the KKK. They were judged by an all-white jury themselves and acquitted for the deaths, found not guilty for the deaths of the 5 people who were killed during the course of this rally. So you see how justice is working in this case and how race is a big part of the outcomes. Ronnie was convicted by an all-white jury where the individuals who killed 5 people at this rally up here were acquitted by an all-white jury. Ronnie was charged with the sexual assault, the rape of a woman in Concord, North Carolina. It was not a murder case. He was charged in May 1976 when North Carolina had a mandatory death sentence for people convicted of rape. So at the time Ronnie was arrested, if he was found guilty, he was subject to the death sentence. Fortunately for Ronnie, in July 1976, the United States Supreme Court held that the mandatory capital scheme in North Carolina was unconstitutional. So Ronnie did not face a capital trial as a result of that intervening decision, which took place in July 1976. So Ronnie was arrested in May 1976. He was tried at the end of September of 1976 and convicted on October 1st, 1976. And but for that decision that took place in July, he would have received a death sentence. Ronnie was arrested on the basis of an identification. The identification was made by the victim in the case under highly unusual circumstances. It occurred 14 days after the sexual assault occurred. The law enforcement had Ronnie in their mind because they had seen him at a park after curfew for the park, and he was wearing a black leather jacket. The victim in the case had said her assailant wore a leather jacket during the course of the attack. Law enforcement then asked the victim in the case if she would come to the courthouse and see if she could identify the person who attacked her 14 days later. And Ronnie was appearing that day in court on those trespassing charges that he had been charged with as a result of being in the park past curfew. She was obviously frightened by the notion of potentially being in a public space with her attacker. So to calm or ease her fears, law enforcement put her in disguise. She was wearing a wig, she was wearing sunglasses, and she was asked to go into the courtroom wearing a disguise to see if she could identify the person who attacked her. She sat in the courtroom for an hour and a half, having not made an identification. She testifies during the course of that hour and a half that she's anxious, nervous, scared, because she's concerned that she may be in the presence of her attacker. When Ronnie's case was called, he stood up with his father to walk to the front of the courtroom. As was customary with a lot of black males during the 70s in North Carolina and throughout the United States, he was once again wearing his leather jacket. She signaled to law enforcement that she believed him to be the person who had attacked her, or at least the most likely to be the person in the courtroom that attacked her. And on the basis of that identification, Ronnie was arrested for the sexual assault. There were some problems very early on. The first being the initial description that was given by the victim was that she had been assaulted by light-skinned or yellow African-American male. If you don't know what yellow refers to, it was customarily a slight made to refer to someone who was of mixed race, African-American or white. Despite that earlier description of her attacker, she quickly became convinced, with the encouragement of law enforcement, that Ronnie had to have been the person who had assaulted her. The only evidence substantively that was presented at Ronnie's trial was that identification of Mr. Long by the victim in the case. Law enforcement, as one would imagine, had been involved in conducting an investigation over the course of those 14 days prior to the identification. And that investigation led to collection of forensic evidence from the scene of the assault. It also included, after the victim was brought to the hospital, the collection of a sexual assault evidence kit by nurses at that hospital that was subsequently turned over to the Concord Police Department. At trial, all the forensic testing that occurred in the case was suppressed from his attorneys. It wasn't provided, and law enforcement officers lied about the fact that testing ever occurred, saying that it had not occurred, that all the items collected in light of the identification were kept by the police department and none of the items brought and subjected to testing. Ronnie's counsel asked whether or not a sexual assault kit was collected from the victim at the hospital and was told explicitly that one had not, despite the fact that it had been collected and turned over to the Concord Police Department the next morning, the day after the sexual assault occurred. At trial, none of that came out. Ronnie was convicted, and then Ronnie, having always maintained his innocence, rejecting offers to accept a plea deal for substantially lesser time, was convicted by the all-white jury and sentenced to life in prison, which was the new required sentence after the potential capital sentence was taken off the table. That started a 44-year odyssey where Ronnie attempted at every turn to bring his injustice before a court, to have it heard, and to finally be recognized as the innocent person he is. So you can see some of the timeline here, which begins in May of 1976, and there are proceedings that sort of start and stop throughout until 2005, when a preservation of evidence motion was filed in the North Carolina Superior Court. And then after April 25th, 2005, some 30 years into his incarceration, for the first time, Judge Irwin Spainhour ordered that material be turned over to Ronnie. And right up there on May 25th, 2005, that's when a judge for the first time told the state they needed to turn over materials to Ronnie. The state at first resisted, saying that nothing had been suppressed. The judge in camera reviewed the file himself, decided that materials had been suppressed and should be turned over to Mr. Long, ruled that the file had to be turned over. It was ultimately provided. And then even then, the police department file didn't have any of the results of the forensic testing. It didn't have a single record that the sexual assault kit had been collected at the hospital, turned over to the police department the day after the assault occurred. The clue that was in the file that was ordered turned over was a report from an officer saying that he drove all the evidence to the state crime lab for forensic testing. That resulted in efforts to figure out from the state crime lab what testing had occurred. Ultimately, after first denying that they had any records, the state crime lab turned over 3 reports showing that all the forensic testing that was done had been compared to standards that had been collected from Mr. Long, and all were negative with respect to whether or not the forensic samples collected from the scene could be tied to Mr. Long himself. The results were that they could not. With respect to the sexual assault kit, the clue that ultimately unearthed the fact that one had been collected and subsequently went missing, disposed of, disappears entirely, was the judge ordered the hospital, Cabarrus Memorial Hospital, to turn over its records from the examination of the victim the night that the assault occurred. And in those records was an evidence control form signed by the police detective saying that they were turning over to the police the sexual assault kit collected that night. So we knew from that time that one had been collected, but there's no indication from the police records themselves that they ever collected it. And as I said, they explicitly said that one wasn't conducted when asked before Mr. Long's trial. This is one of the notes from the SBI reports that were ultimately obtained. This was a hair. This was comparing hairs that were found from the scene. At the scene, hairs were collected that were said to be of Negroid origin, lab parlance for black hair. Those hairs that were said to have been of Negroid origin from the scene were then compared to samples from Mr. Long, and you can see they were found to be different from suspect's hair. So they knew at the time that the hairs collected from the scene were deemed to exclude Mr. Long's hair as the source of those hairs. Moreover, when we talk about the evidence, they brought the black leather jacket that they collected from Ronnie when they brought him to the police station to the SBI, and they asked the SBI to review that jacket for trace evidence that it had been worn during the course of an assault, etc. And the officer testified that it was never brought for testing, despite the fact that it had been. Now, testimony at trial was that the victim had fought so hard with her attacker that her nails were bent backwards, almost ripped off of her fingers, and yet the black leather jacket that they took from Long, believed to be probative of him being involved in the crime, had no markings or indications that it had been worn during the course of any type of assault, and they lied at trial to suggest that it had never been brought to a lab at all. So the case was litigated throughout all those years. The North Carolina court denied relief to Mr. Long. The North Carolina Supreme Court, and an unusual occurrence, I don't know of any other occurrence of such nature, but perhaps others do, a justice from the Supreme Court, after hearing arguments in Ronnie's case, retired before the decision was rendered, and the North Carolina Supreme Court split 3-3 on whether or not he was entitled to relief. As a result of that split, his conviction was upheld, despite, I guess, a tie occurring in the Supreme Court. So tie goes to the state in this instance. We ultimately became involved in federal habeas proceedings, and this case was argued to the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. And with respect to the panel, we lost a 2-1 decision from a panel of Court of Appeals judges finding that deference was owed to the state court decision, and that in light of that deference, no relief could be offered through the federal courts. Ultimately, we asked for the full court to review it. So 15 judges from the Court of Appeals heard arguments and then decided the case. I have a clip here from Chief Judge Roger Gregory. He's no longer the Chief Judge, but sort of talking about how the lies that occurred through trial about the physical evidence impacted the trial. So I thought I would play a brief clip from Judge Gregory and then start asking Ronnie some questions about all he endured during those 44 years. So this is Judge Gregory speaking of the state's withholding of all the forensic test results and all the physical evidence in the case.
That's a yes or no. That's a yes or no answer. That was not true.
Your Honor,
that was not. No. Was that true?
Your Honor, I don't think it was fully accurate. But if I may explain,
the answer is no. It wasn't.
Your Honor,
and that's what. Wait, counsel. We're talking about justice and looking back some 44 years ago. The prosecution told the jurors the closing, the piece de resistance of a trial. It consists with every piece of evidence existent. What about the pubic hair? What about the hair from his head? What about all those things not disclosed? To say to the jury it is consistent with every piece of evidence that's in existence. Yes, isn't that appalling to justice?
Your Honor,
So the state attempted to defend the fact that all this evidence had not been turned over. And the Judge Gregory is honing in on closing arguments that occurred during the course of Ronnie's trial, where the prosecutor said every piece of physical evidence collected from the scene was consistent in establishing the guilt of Ronnie Long. And of course, while he's saying that, all the forensic reports on that physical evidence were being concealed from Mr. Long, indicative of the fact that his standards that were provided were excluded as the potential source of the material collected from the scene. So ultimately, after 44 years, 3 months and 17 days, the Fourth Circuit, sitting en banc, ruled in Mr. Long's favor, held that his rights had been violated at trial. Judge Gregory, Judge Wynn, and Judge Stacker went further, saying that it was conclusive that he was actually innocent from the crime, or for the crime. And Judge Wynn had some very strong words with respect to the officers and their conduct on the basis of the fact that Mr. Long would have faced death at the time he was arrested, saying that the officers had evidence, despite knowing that doing so could lead directly to Mr. Long's death. Such an action is repugnant in any context. Fortunately, as a result of that intervening Supreme Court decision in July 1976, we welcome Mr. Long here to share a little bit about his experience. So Ronnie, I'm going to start by asking you, 5 years ago, you were in prison as a result of this conduct by the state of North Carolina. Could you envision sitting here at Duke Law talking to an international audience of academics about your case?
First and foremost, I give praise and honor to a greater creator for me even to have this opportunity to be here. 5 years ago, I couldn't imagine this. 5 years ago, I didn't have the slightest idea about how I'm going to get out of the penitentiary. I had discovered the evidence, but yet and still, wasn't nobody recognizing and wasn't nobody respecting what I was putting forth in court. No, I couldn't see this 5 years ago.
How did you, for those 44 years, maintain hope that the day would finally come when you'd see your freedom?
Through divine inspiration. Believe in yourself. You know that you're not guilty of something that you've been accused of. That hope and that faith. That one day, you understand, I'll be able to walk up out of here like I walked in here. Like I said, I give praise to a greater creator. And because of that, you understand what I'm saying, I kept scribing and kept hoping that one day I would walk out the penitentiary.
Now, you were offered a plea
Yeah.
prior to your trial. Were there times during those years that you regretted not accepting the plea that you had been offered that would have resulted in your freedom years before?
Well, I'm telling you now, sincere heart. Yeah, I thought about it. When they offered me 7 years, I thought about it. Afterwards. But when they gave it to me, when they offered it to me, my dad, he made a statement. He told me, he said, I didn't raise y'all to say that you did something when you didn't do it. That's why I come out and jump on them 7 years. But later on down the line, it's my 30, 35, 40. I'm thinking, man, shoot, I could have been out here, man, long 7 years ago. But yet and still, I wasn't able to come to this point right here. I wasn't able to be able to prove what was done to me. If I'd have jumped over the 7 years, then I'd have been tagged and branded as being a sexual assaulter. And within that in my heart and mind, you understand, saying, nah, I couldn't do that. Nah. Because I wanted justice to be known and I wanted people to know exactly what had been done to me.
Tell me a little bit about how life was like in the penitentiary for you.
Being put in a situation, you understand, saying I had never been acquainted with, I had never seen. It was brand new to me. I went into it with the mentality, man, I come there to die. I'm going inside these fences to die. They were trying to kill me, like he said, but the cynic was about it. But being inside there with a bunch of people, and I'm about to say in 76, they abolished the death sentence. That's how I missed it. 200 men came off death row in Central Prison. So they put those 200 men on the West Yard and dropped me right out there in the midst of them. So my mentality was, I ain't pulling no punches. I ain't pulling no punches. My dad ain't raised no weaklings. And I'm going to stand tall amongst any one of these people up in here. So what I did, you understand, saying, I had faith in God that I could come through this without being subjected to some more crime or subjected to something, you understand, saying, that was far more than what I imagined. But being there, you got to have a state of mind, and you got to keep your faith and your hope because, number one, it's a lot of adversity around you.
Let me ask you, because we've talked about this before. You're convicted on October 1st, 1976, and shortly after your conviction, the police show up, get you from the county jail, and you begin the drive from Concord, North Carolina, to Central Prison in Raleigh. What thoughts are going through your mind as you're being driven from the county jail to prison for the first time in Raleigh?
This ain't happening. This ain't happening. Why is this happening to me? You understand what I'm saying? I know I wasn't no good kid. You understand what I'm saying? When I was in the street, but I wasn't what they say I am either. And I'm being subjected to this, so I got to be stand tall. Now I'm going through that. And look, it's raining hard. It's raining hard. They had just finished fighting in the courtroom. It just been a riot in the courtroom. They grabbed me, put me in a car, station wagon in a car. And this is the song they were playing. I don't know if too many of y'all familiar with the song. But it's a song by Daryl Hall and John Oates. And I'm sitting in the back of the station, they got me in full restraint. And the song is playing, She's Gone. She's gone, oh, I gotta learn how to face it. She's gone, that's Daryl Hall and John Oates. And this was playing. You understand? I'm still like, listen to this. And the police, these two officers that's driving me to Raleigh, they're going real fast. They driving real fast under these conditions. So in my mind, I'm thinking, please hurry up and get me to Raleigh. Because we have a wreck out here now. It's a done deal. They ain't gonna save me. They gonna do what they gotta do to save themselves. Well, I'm praying that you get me to Raleigh. I didn't really have, I had just turned 21 too. And I had never experienced anything like in Walker. When they pulled up, the center prison that you see today ain't the center prison that I looked at in 76. When I looked, it looked just like a Frankenstein castle in one of them Transylvania movies. It's the archway windows with the bars on them, and they got pigeons flying in and out of the windows. It's 5 tiers straight up. I knew I had to stand tall.
If you're unfamiliar with Central Prison in Raleigh, it's been around for a long time, and they've built onto it over the years. So when Ronnie describes it as Frankenstein's castle, when he arrived in '76, it was before many of the modern. It was.
I didn't think you were working, man.
Flip it on. It was before many of the modern renovations. So it was a cinder block type building with the arched doorways, etc. Ronnie, while you're incarcerated, how did you deal with sort of the ups and downs of your case? Because as we saw, there was a history of it going into court, a ruling against you, going into court, a ruling against you. How did you maintain hope despite kind of that roller coaster that was going on?
Every document that I filed in the court system, and dating all the way back to the Superior Court in Cabarrus County, every document that I filed in court was denied. Every one. I mean, even with the evidence that I found, you understand, all of my documents were denied, but yet still, I knew I had to keep scratching, and clawing. I had to keep going, doing what I was doing because I couldn't give up on this injustice. I wasn't going to let this injustice outlive me, so finding these documents in court, and then what really almost sunk my boat was when the North Carolina Supreme Court ruled 3-3 in my motion that I filed in the North Carolina Supreme Court. They are appropriate relief. With that kind of evidence that I had against these people, it was perplexing to me as to why all my motions will keep getting denied. And thank God, Lord, I must have thank God for the Fourth Circuit and Duke Wrongful Conviction Clinic, who came along later. A blessing within itself. And helped me file those motions that I had in court. And luckily that it was in the Fourth Circuit, you had just people there that was in the Fourth Circuit. So from Cabarrus County, 76, all the way up, about 2005, 2010, somewhere in there. You came in 15, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the way up to the end, man, I wouldn't get no justice. All the way up to them, I'm getting no justice. And I'm thinking to myself, in order for me to get the kind of justice I'm needing, you understand, saying, I'm going to have to fight harder than what I'm fighting. But like I say, thank to God that the right people were put in my life. And that's the reason why the Creator had me sitting here right here today.
Do you remember when Teresa and I first came and visited you, what you told us was needed in your case?
No, tell me.
You looked at us and you said, no one's going to do the right thing in this case.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to fight you.
No
and I need some attorneys that are willing to get in a ditch
and fight.
and be in the trenches and fight with me.
Fight
Do you remember telling us that?
I remember telling you understand, saying that they ain't playing fair. Man, they ain't playing fair. And what you up against, man, you understand, saying they're going to be up against some people, man, that's going to deny everything that you file. But you got to be willing to keep going. You got to be able to get in there and fight with them. Yeah, like you say, get in the trenches. Yeah. And I knew, you understand, saying they were going to take some people, man, that wasn't scared to stand up for what is right. in order for me to get up out of it, because like I say, from the Superior Court to the North Carolina Supreme Court, the conspiracy was down. They wouldn't let me out.
Let me ask you, during that period while you were incarcerated, you dealt with significant loss personally.
Yeah.
How did you maintain yourself as you were incarcerated when your father passed away? You were incarcerated when siblings passed away. And just 1 month before your release, you were incarcerated when your mother passed away.
Man, I want to eat a brick. I'll bite a brick in hand. I'm talking about what they gave me for compensation will never replace what I lost. I'm talking about 44 years with my mother and father. I'm talking about
Let me put this on.
my two sisters. I lost two sisters. My father and my mother. And like he said, my mother died 30 days before I got out. And my sister, she said, Ronnie, get what mama asked me before she died. Now, what she asked you? Tell me. Is Ronnie home yet? So she kind of felt and knew that I was coming up out of it, because all the time she would always tell me, just keep your nose clean. God gonna bring you through this. And my sister said, she asked, is Ronnie home? And I said, what'd you tell her? Mama, he on his way home right now. He on his way home right now. But I ain't never get to see my mother. My dad had died 10 years before then. My two sisters died in between that. So I feel as though right now, you understand, son, I haven't been compensated for what they took from me. And what they look at me and say, well, okay, you out. Well and good. I'll praise you due to the Creator.
I want to ask you a little bit more about your mother, because when you were first brought into custody in this case, police came to your home. And what happened when police came to your home?
I'm taking back to the courtroom scene. You know, you told me about it, but I'm taking back. In 1976, here it is, an influential white woman, prestigious white woman, wealthy white woman. She just said, that's the black man, that man right there raped me. She just said it to these police. They do not arrest me right then. I turned around and walked out the courtroom. Justin, you can leave, man. I left. Me and my daddy went home. I went home with the bed. Went to sleep my way back up. These same two detectives sitting in the courtroom come to my house. But they don't still have a warrant. They still ain't got no warrant. Me along, we need Ronnie to come downtown and sign some papers that represent that trespassing matter this morning. My mom said, they threw that out. Y'all know what's wrong, but he left before he signed these papers. Do we need anybody with him? No, ma'am. He don't need nobody with him. No, ma'am. He'll take 15, 20 minutes at the most. He'll be back home. He can either drive down or ride down with her. My mama said, Ronnie, call me when you get there and call me when you leave. I didn't never get to make that phone call when I left, because I didn't never leave until she died. So I called and told her what they get ready to do. But I didn't never make that phone call and say, Mom, I'm home. I'm out. But they lied in my mama's face, man. They did, just better look at my mama and told her, no, he don't need nobody with him. They took me downtown and locked me up for 44 years. That 15, 20 minutes turned into 44 years.
Now, you mentioned when you're driving to Central Prison that they rushed you out of the courtroom. Why did they rush you out of the courtroom? What was the scene after you were convicted?
And I'm sitting up in there, my mom and dad behind me. I already knew I was going to jail. I already knew I was going to the penitentiary, because the sheriff done picked these people up here. I got 12 whites, 13 with one white officer. When they stood up and said, courtroom packed, guilty, they started fighting. I'm getting ready to bounce. And they fighting over here. I'm getting ready to get up out of here. My mama grabbed me in the back of my belt. Just like this. And say, Ronnie, you went naked out the front door. They on top of the building and everything out there. Just say, lock that door. Lock that door. Get that man. Get that man. I want that man to send the prison tonight. And they hustled me out the courtroom, man. Throw me in the cell, man. Went back out, came back and got me. Put me in full restraint. You left. But the commotion in the courtroom was, man, when they said guilty, the brothers and sisters, man, that I grew up with, they knew me, they started fighting in there.
So it almost turned into a bit of a riot.
It was a riot.
Yeah.
It was a riot.
There's scenes, and there was some news coverage of the officers just sort of brutally clearing the courtroom after the conviction, because as I said, it was a very hotly contested, controversial case, even during the time back in 1976. I'm just going to ask, I think, one more question, then open it up for anyone to ask you a question. Did you have confidence that it would be corrected at any point in time when you were first brought to Central Prison? And did you think it would have you would have been free before 44 years at any point in time?
I kept telling myself over and over again that I'm walking out of here. I'm going to walk out of here. Not one time did I accept where I was at my final destination. I would say, you'll be out in 5 more years. I wait 5 more years and I ain't out. Don't worry about it. You got to just take 5 more. I'm fighting for them 5 years there. Get out. And I kept telling myself over and over again, through the course of the 44 years, then, don't worry about it, you're going to get out. And I kept cutting it in half, cutting it down like 5 years. 5 more years, I'm out of here. 5 more, I'm out of here in 15, 20 years now. You cannot let this beat you. And I'm be sincerely with you. The Creator put vessels in my life, you understand, said to make this thing possible. When she come along, when you
Who's
come
she?
along,
Introduce
well, this my
she.
wife. Well, this my wife right here. Now look, this is the second half of me right here. This is my wingman. She from North Carolina. And I got out the I'm gonna show you how God works. I got out the penitentiary on her birthday. It was her birthday, I walked out the penitentiary. I don't know this woman. You know, and I thought it was a conspiracy when she first come up. Now they got me in here for this. Now here come this. No, I ain't going for it. But the Creator was in control. Look, fought for me. Found them. Google. Found them. Look, and from there, her, them, my family. See, my family always been there with me. My family always fought with me. She's from Midwest. Ow. Ain't no black people in the house.
Yes, sir.
It is. Shoot my out.
Very
Look,
percentage.
and I'm telling you, listen, I'm treading this on eggshells because something up. But she was there because the Creator put her there. And she been with me ever since. And I told her, help me now. And I can flip this. I'm going to take care of you later. I got her.
So your case received a lot of attention prior to your being released.
Yeah.
I think over the course of the final 2 years of your incarceration, your case was featured on CBS Morning News, other national coverage, and people were holding rallies in Concord and in Raleigh. What did all that support mean to you as you were still languishing in prison before you were ultimately released?
I ain't the only one to believe in this. I ain't the only one to believe, you understand, saying that you're innocent. I ain't the only one to believe, you understand, saying you've been held unjustly. I'm going to say this. 3 universities took part in me being where I am today. All praise go to the Creator, but He put these people there. I'm on the UNC. UNC, 2 lawyers from UNC, innocence, natural innocence, actual innocence, went to Cabarrus County and found that evidence in 2005. But the North Carolina Supreme Court kept hitting them in the head. Every document I paid, every document I filed, they knocked them in the head. They, no good. Now here come Wrongful Conviction Clinic. Wrongful Conviction Clinic come along, and they found documents for me in federal court, Middle District, federal court. Like you said, 3 of them, they denied me. But the 2 that were there, there said Nehemiah Richard, Trump appointed one, and then the other one from North Carolina. So 2 men. They denied me. But the one white female, she spoke up for me. She wrote a 26-page opinion. Behind that, and Duke Wrongful Conviction Clinic, I need you to pack that courtroom. That's what he said. I need you to pack that courtroom. Let these people see something they ain't never seen before. I went to her. Get them people in that courtroom. I want to say the state students, that's what he said. I want to say the state students. A sea of red. They got a red shirt. All of them got red shirts on. And the judge, my understanding was that I ain't never seen this in this courtroom before. Yeah. There's a lot of people, man, that took part.
Winston-Salem, the criminal justice department at Winston-Salem State University actually had buses drive to Richmond with their students, so their students could be present during oral arguments of Ronnie's case. And it was kind of remarkable arguing the case, looking back, and it's just like a sea of young black faces from Winston-Salem State taking up every inch of space in the courtroom. And we wanted that because we wanted to convey the message that this is a very important case and that the racial justice element in this case needs to be taken seriously. So they answered the call despite the lumps we took that day during the course of arguments. We have about 15 minutes remaining, and Teresa has the first question or comment, it looks like.
It's quick, but it is a comment, or 2 comments and a question. His wife, his wing woman, is Ashley Long. Her name should be said, and I want to, not criticizing you, Ronnie, I just want to say this. If any of us ever gets in trouble, we want Ashley on our team because she wouldn't let us rest, right? So, what are you doing? You're eating breakfast? Get back to the office. Ronnie's still in prison. So she is an amazing advocate in person, and they're a great team. So I want to first, so thank you, Ashley, for being, she'd show up at rallies for our other clients with her dog, with free Ronnie Long signs on him, and she'd walk him back and forth. So we love Ashley, and her work on Ronnie's behalf was just unparalleled. Second, I want to thank you, Ronnie, because how many times have we heard your story? And this is my thank you for sharing it with us, but also there's a comment, a question that goes with it. What is it like that we were all moved by the details? We were angry, right? We were, some of us, surprised that this could go on. But you've heard it so many times. What does it feel like when I think about re-traumatizing or damaging, or how do you feel when you hear again and again what was done to you for no reason, no good reason?
I feel as though you're saying the injustice is still legal because of the 4 true perpetrators, the 4 detectives. They never were brought to justice. Why is it that I can sit on the witness stand and go to jail for committing perjury, but you case get on the witness stand and just lie and lie and continue to lie. Because you got immunity. I hate the fact that injustice is still a link because it wasn't nothing done to them before detectives.
Joe, you had.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Mr. Long. First, I just have to say that Teresa and Jamie have really inspired what you did. It's just the best sort of work in our profession. Mr. Long, so what happened to you was obviously not an accident. People lied about the evidence to send you to prison, and then they lied about their lies to keep you in prison. You've got a lot to be angry about. That much anger, I think, would destroy most people. So how do you deal with your feelings towards the prosecutor and the police who lied?
I can't let that eat me inside. I can't let that destroy me. What little life I got left, you understand? I can't sit and live it worried about what I'm gonna do to them. You know what I mean? If it come about, if it be the will of the Creator, it will happen. It will happen. They will get their justice somewhere down the line. Maybe not in court, but you understand? On the day of reckoning. You understand? That day will come where they got to stand before the master, and their deeds got to get dirty. For real. So I don't let that bother me. You understand? I hate it. Understand me? Every time I think about it, you understand? I hate it. But yet still, man, I got a life I got to live. Man, what little I got left, I got to keep going on.
That's inspiring too.
Yes.
Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your story, Mr. Long. Recently, the City of Concord paid compensation to you. It's not enough, but they also wrote a letter, and I want to hear what your thoughts about the letter that they wrote to you.
And just to provide context, the City of Concord, at the time of the settlement, issued a statement, and that statement included an apology for what occurred in the case to both Ronnie, his family, and an acknowledgement of all the misconduct that occurred, which is extremely rare for those sorts of acknowledgments to be made during the course of a settlement. What did that mean to you?
I mean, you understand, I'm grateful, you understand, that somebody somewhere stand up and admit that what wrong that they were committed. Because, like you say, this is a rarity, something unique, you understand. You don't only ever see people in the county or the police, you understand, saying that, okay, we were wrong. We made a mistake. They not, I mean, if you go back to any other cases, you understand, they've been exonerated, you don't see that. You don't see it because they know wholeheartedly what they were doing. People trying to kill me, man. They were trying to execute me. You understand, for something that I didn't do. But you understand, them writing this letter, my mother followed their head, though. You know what I mean? But I appreciate them doing that because, number one, I'm getting ready to come up behind them with something else. Yeah, you already admitted what you done. It ain't old. No, the fight ain't old. I appreciate it, though. But it ain't old. All right? Don't all y'all holler at the same time. I want to get that in.
I'm gonna answer Joe for you a little bit too. I mean, having been sort of deeply involved in the settlement conversations that were occurring back and forth, I can tell you how important it was that letter be included as a part of the settlement, because Ronnie was insistent that at the end of the day, if the case was going to settle, that there needed to be acknowledgement of the misconduct that took place, but most importantly, there needed to be recognition of the harm done, not just to him, but to his family as well, which is why the inclusion of the family was such an important thing. Ronnie received, several millions of dollars in settlement. He wouldn't have accepted it if that letter didn't exist and if that letter didn't acknowledge the harm to his family. There was no amount of money that he was willing to take if they weren't going to recognize what had been done to him and his family. And his family was really important because they had to live in this community. They had to continue living in Concord, North Carolina for all these years that Ronnie was incarcerated under the cloud of what he had been accused of, seeing the elected leaders in the community band together to reject all the claims that Ronnie was trying to shout from the rooftops about his innocence. So it was extremely important through those negotiations that it was known to the city, to the insurance carriers that ultimately pony up the check, that this is not going to happen unless you guys take responsibility for the harm caused to Ronnie and his family.
I do want to say that even though it was required, and I'm not speaking specifically, it was required here, there are jurisdictions that we have cases, in which we have cases, they would not write a letter. I am confident that they'd rather not settle than write a letter. So this letter has independent meaning, not just that you required it, but that they knew it. So, because we do have jurisdictions where they would fight to the end and not provide that letter. We have others, as Ronnie already knows, I think, we have others where the judges apologized from the bench when they were releasing our clients. And those apologies are really so important. We had a crim law professor here recently retired, Sarah Bell, who apologized to one of our clients when he was being introduced to, he was walking around the building, and she said, "I'm so sorry." He said, "You didn't do anything." And she said, "Look at the caption. It says State of North Carolina versus Lamont Burton Armstrong, and we're the state of North Carolina, and we apologize." So apologies are really meaningful, and I'm so glad, Ronnie, that you received one.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. I'm curious about sort of what's happened since your release, and as you've returned, sort of what have been the challenges? What's been maybe more difficult than you expected, but also what's been great? What's gone well, or what has like the most joy have you found in?
Since I've been out?
Yeah.
To be able to do things without being under surveillance. To be able to go where you want to go, eat what you want to eat. You understand what I'm saying? Without being watched. To be able to, a lot of people take it for granted, cut the grass, take the trash out. See, the whole thing like that, you understand, you don't do inside the fence, down the wall. But people in the street, you understand, they take that for granted. I would love it right now. I take trash out all the time.
Taking it out once.
I put it on the curb.
He does take it to the curb.
To be able to do things that where you're not under surveillance, where people are not supervising what you do. That would finish up to have that relief to know that this is behind me. And it's time for me to live to the extreme or to the extent to where ain't no hold bar. I'm going to do what I need to do because she don't want to do nothing. I mean, like Las Vegas, Atlantic City, you know what I mean? Go places I ain't been.
He won't get on a plane though, so
I ain't
it's
get
really limited.
I think that's suicide. I'm not getting on. To be able to do things that I haven't done. To see places that I ain't never seen. I ain't never been to New York. But I'm going. You know what I mean? That right there is what I feel and what I do now, because once upon a time I couldn't see this far.
What are the challenges?
Ain't none.
I thought you were going to say me.
Ain't no whole bar. There ain't no whole bar. You understand what I'm saying? I'm going to do what I feel as though I can do within boundaries, you understand, within the law. But I'm going to do things that I need to do that I feel as though it's okay. She don't want to do nothing. You know what I mean? All she want to do is sit around.
I'm a homebody.
And
She wants to travel. You just went to New Orleans together, so.
Yeah, we went to New Orleans. What about Iowa? What did you do in Iowa when you went there?
They want to put me on a track.
No, it was a combine. It was a combine.
I ain't never seen no tractor that big.
And he went and saw Twister Hill.
Yeah.
The movie Twister
That
Hill.
tractor big as this room. And I'm on it. I got on it. I'm reading it. I mean, to me, this is something I see on TV. to have, man, it's about $1 million tractor right here. And to see what it's doing and the people that it's serving from what it's doing, because in this agriculture field, you understand, it's providing food for a lot of people. And I'm riding the thing, and I ain't never did, and I see it picking this thing and shooting it over in this other bin that's riding beside it. She's standing out there laughing. I mean, but to be able to do things that I haven't done before, man, the challenges, no hold bar. I'm full speed ahead, for real. As long as it's not detrimental.
I think we have time for one more question.
I just have a comment, Mr. Long. Judge Wynn, right around the time he retired, was over here at the law school, and I mentioned just how important and how much we all cared about what he wrote in your case.
Mm.
And it was right around the time that Concord apologized and settled. And I'm sure you won't be surprised that he said, you know, that man's injustice was racist through and through, and they can't pay him enough and they can't apologize enough.
No, they can't. No, they can't. I'm serious. Because ain't nothing what they did to me can replace what I lost. Nothing. But I'm grateful for what they give me, though. I'm grateful to have what I have. But I can't never be compensated for what I lost.
So,
Judge Wynn was proud to play his role, and I wanted to pass that on to you.
Okay.
So to end on a lighter note, since it's been in a heavy sort of discussion, and going back to Angie's question, one of my favorite things about Ronnie's freedom so far is him learning about things he liked that he never knew he liked. Including karaoke. And here Ronnie is singing karaoke with my daughter. So according to Ashley, Ronnie sings karaoke upstairs sometimes, and she'll just hear him up there singing along with his favorite tunes. So
He likes the mic.
In the 4 or 5 years he's been free, he's had the opportunity to find things or discover things that he likes that he never knew or could have never known before.
Yeah.
So thank you, Ronnie, for being with
No
us.
doubt.